Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Mike Luke, joined by Mr. William Brad Alice. Hello, William. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay, Michael.
All right. Now, Brad, listen, growing up in the Lute Olson era, we generally knew when a team did not want to be there for a game. Generally that game right before Christmas or right before New Year's, generally against LSU, or a team, or when you would go to the Pac-12 tournament with a 1 seed already locked up. This felt very much like one of those games. I didn't actually hate. I wasn't. I'll be honest with you. I was more upset the morning after the game because Arizona just didn't show up. And to me, that's when you're playing for a 1 seed. To me, that's kind of inexcusable. This loss really bummed me the morning after.
See, I was the opposite. I was more upset during and right immediately after than later on when I realized that's exactly what it was. They weren't really, I mean, they were still playing for something. They're playing for a 1 seed. And the 1 seed's not off the table, but it's going to be a lot harder. They're going to need, Tennessee and or who, the other teams lurking to lose very early in their conference tournaments, and Arizona's going to have to win out. That being said, yeah, I didn't like the effort. It just, and we said this. It's ironic because we said this the last time we talked, that Arizona needs Caleb Love and Pelle Larsson to play well, and then a couple other guys to step up. The problem was a couple other guys stepped up, and Larsson and Love were not very good. So that was the problem. Obviously you'd rather have a 1 than a 2. I think it's pretty ridiculous that people are now doom and glooming it so much they think Arizona's dropping to the 3 line. Maybe if they lose that first game. Arizona's all but locked into the 2 West, and the question now is it Tennessee or does someone leapfrog them?
Right. I think the one thing that is interesting, though, is you don't have a ton of margin for error, though. You can't lose to USC in the first round of the Pac-12 tournament. Then it becomes a little bit dicey because you got some pretty bad losses at that point. So you got to take care of business. Again, you're still a 2 seed out West. And honestly, if you're a 2 seed out West, I'm fine with that. To answer some of the questions on here, the selection committee usually tries to put people out West that are, the top 2 seeds. They try to keep them in their geographical bracket where they want to be. So I would imagine that. But I also don't know that you can afford to stumble against USC, though, either in the first round of the tournament, though, either.
No, I think you have to get to the semifinals. I think that's kind of the bare minimum to keep that 2 seed. Because whoever you play in the first round, whether it's USC or and I forget who the other team is, it's another bad loss. And Arizona now has 3 bad losses. Which is kind of what separates them from some of these other teams. Because if you look at Carolina, you look at Tennessee, their losses of late, maybe even Duke, have been to very good teams, ranked teams. Tennessee was trying to run that 4-4 with ranked teams. You lose to Kentucky, that's not going to really hurt them. Whereas again, losing to a sub 500 or flirting with 500 USC team is a bad loss. Oregon State and Stanford are awful losses that most teams that Arizona is competing with don't have. Now, Arizona's overall record stacks up very favorably against ranked teams, but you have to balance that with those bad losses.
Yeah, and that's the part that comes back to it is Arizona's got some really, really good wins. You got Duke, you got Alabama, but Arizona's also got some really crummy losses at that point. And I think that's what's frustrating, and that's why it kind of feeds into the narrative that I think a lot of people are concerned about is that it could be a Final Four or it could be around a 32 game. I want to get to Caleb Love. I'm a big Caleb Love fan, but one thing that I was not happy with how Caleb played because honestly, I thought Caleb had a lot to play for in this game. I don't know that he was going to be a first-team All-American, but I thought a second-team All-American was very much in his, but in a game on national television, he had probably maybe his worst game of the season, and he and Pelle just kind of looked disinterested. I think that's what bothered me about this is I just don't know how you go into a game like this being disinterested.
In a weird way, it looked like a team that really probably overly celebrated. And I don't mean negative way, not like out partying things, but just Richard Jefferson in the locker room singing, Bad Boys for Life. I'm sure they went out for some fine dining in LA. Who knows how hard, if they even practiced the next day. It just looked like a team that was coasting on their laurels of being the Pac-12 regular season champions.
Right.
Whether that means disinterested, whether that means lack of focus, whether that means, yeah, and again, I'm not saying they're out partying, but the post-win hangover of just like our stuff doesn't stink right now. We're good. We're playing great basketball, and then they didn't. So now hopefully that's the kick in the butt wake-up call they need because, frankly, again, we agree. You cannot lose that first-round game in the Pac-12 tournament. I'm not even sure losing the semifinal game. I mean, it's going to be a Colorado-ish type team. It would ironically enough be their first okay loss, not bad loss, not good loss, okay loss. So we'll see though. But that's what that team just looked like. We're playing that extra game tacked on here. It's like we won the Pac-12 tournament, but we gotta go play another game the day after, right. And that's what it looked like.
I think Jesse Johnson makes a great point where he says, and again, we're going to get to some of the good parts because there are some good aspects to the game. Not many, but there are a few. I'm curious if all the U of A fans touting high confidence will be as accepting of the regular season pattern if this team loses in the second round. That's a great point. If Arizona lays an egg in the second round, then you got to say that, man, this was a consistency issue all year. And that goes right back to Tommy Lloyd, William.
Honestly, I think this is a fan base, right or wrong, is not going to accept anything beyond an Elite Eight performance. Because the one thing you can knock Tommy Lloyd on right now is deep tournament runs.
Right.
Ironically enough, as bad as Miller was at the end, remember at one point he was something like 13-3, something like that, because he went to what? 3 Elite Eights and Sweet 16 in a row before the early. So and Lloyd has a Sweet 16 run where they were the higher seed. Now again, we all know
they didn't play well. They didn't play well in any of those games, though. And that's
they didn't. And then they pooped the bed last year. So that's the one thing missing from his resume as an Arizona basketball coach. So I think even if they go to the Sweet 16 and they run into a really good 3 seed, fan base won't care. I think it's Elite Eight or bust. And for some fans, it's going to be Final Four or bust. I think that's unfair to put on any team since the 90. UNLV team or that last undefeated Kentucky team. But this is a team that if they're not playing in the second weekend, then there's some big questions.
Yeah, like I said, too, I'm at the stage with Tommy Lloyd. I don't really care about this SC loss, but you got to win some games in the NCAA tournament. That's where you're going to be judged. You've got all the regular season wins. We all know that you can coach. The one question, though, is how are your teams going to perform come postseason? And that's right around the corner. Nobody's going to care about this game if Arizona goes far. People will also maybe look back to it saying, man, there were some warning signs. Tommy Lloyd's going to be judged entirely according to what happens in March, Brad.
No, that's exactly right. And again, not even March. I mean, what is he? 6-0 in the Pac-12 tournament. Right. It's all about the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
And right or wrong, that's where legacies are made. I mean, the one thing keeping Lute Olson from being in the
top 5 to 8 coach of all time is multiple titles.
Is the fact he's got the one title. Right. And it was on a year they shouldn't have won the title. The one reason certain guys keep getting hyped up is because they have, the Final Four runs. I mean, Sean Miller never went to a Final Four. That's held against him, and maybe it's deserved. Shaka Smart seen as an elite coach because he made the one Final Four run. He's been a good coach. Not great. Rick Barnes is a guy with one Final Four run. So yeah, this is where your legacy is made, right or wrong. Same thing. It's in college football. It's in every league. I mean, everyone says Jordan 6-0 in finals. That's why he's better than LeBron. Well, there's other reasons better than LeBron. Personally, as a Kansas City Chiefs fan, Mahomes can't pass Brady till he at least gets close in Super Bowls. No matter what he does statistically, and that's it. That's what you play for. You play for rings. You're measured on rings. That's why. Nick Saban is considered better than Bill Snyder, even though I would argue what Bill Snyder did at Kansas State back in the 90s was a much better coaching job. John Wooden will always have his legacy. Coach K, rightfully, will always have his legacy. Why? Rings, and more rings.
Right. Dennis Walsh, this is very funny. By the way, let's make fun of ASU for a second. ASU's best player quitting right before the postseason starts. That's one of the more bizarre things that I've ever seen, especially he's 26 years old, Brad. ASU, that's why you'll always be suckers.
That it was weird. This isn't a guy leaving. Even, Dennis Lattimore left in February, but that was a personal thing with a conflict with the teammate. This is a guy who literally just said we got a brace for March, and then left 48 hours later. And you had to think the money would be there in 2 weeks. But who knows? So my guess is we see guys. Unfortunately, that's been the knock on the ASU program. How many guys leave, and they leave for lateral moves? It's not like I know was it Collins or whoever went to Kansas. You can understand that, but a lot of guys just go to very similar programs.
Cambridge goes to Texas Tech. I mean, it's kind of the same thing. By the way, Brad, do you think that maybe he could be at the Gila River Resorts and Casinos?
It would be a good place to stop. It's not that far from the airport if he's flying international.
Check it out. The Gila River Resorts and Casinos. You do you, just like Jacob Franklin at the Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Visit play@gila.com for more details. Maybe you'll see Jose Perez there as well, enjoying a fun and immersive experience and game time. Let's say now that he decides that, guess what? I want to go watch ASU, but I don't have any tickets because I'm not on the team anymore. Maybe he'll use game time to go watch ASU at the Pac-12 tournament. That one actually made me laugh. All right, check it out. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHNX for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code PHNX for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Okay, now,
you could get a steal of a ticket for $20 off if you want to see ASU.
I was going to say, man, they're going to pay you to take those tickets. I very, very much happened. All right, now let's talk Keshad Johnson for a second. Keshad Johnson is a great recruiting tool for Tommy Lloyd. Keshad Johnson came to Arizona and has already made more three-pointers in one season at Arizona than he made during his entire tenure at San Diego State, spanning all 4 years. For a good percentage of the season, we were talking about how we needed Keshad Johnson to be locked in. We needed Keshad Johnson to be a difference maker. And I don't know that I necessarily thought that he would be a difference maker from 3-point range, but Brad, he's taking the shots and he's looking good doing it.
We all thought he could add a little bit more offensively to his game. I don't know what that meant. I said I really liked his mid-range game when looking at his film, and thought maybe he could take some guys off the dribble and that pull-up he likes. But yeah, I don't want him taking a ton of 3-point shots, but when he has that open look, and as the case may be, if he is hot, then I don't mind the heat check 3. I don't want to see the heat check 3 as the first one in a game where you're up 6 and the offense is flowing. But like the other night when they needed him to keep them in the game, he's certainly capable. And that's good because he's a guy who, as a senior, should be able to read the momentum and the ebb and flow of the game and play to that strength, whereas a younger guy might not be able to.
Did I ever tell you about Jacob, the text that I received from Jacob Franklin before Arizona played ASU? And he says, don't worry. He says, let's be honest. You're a little bit nervous about playing ASU and about what they can bring to the table. You did say this, Jacob Franklin. The text messages are there. Jacob Franklin, come back into the chat. I am adding Jacob Franklin to the chat right now. Jacob Franklin, you'll join the chat. Come on, Jacob Franklin. We're adding Jacob to the stage. Coming down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Boom. Jacob Franklin is in. Hello, Jacob Franklin. I guess he didn't want to do it. This guy sucks. And then Umar Ballo.
I was only nervous about the second ASU game just because of how well Arizona had played in Tucson, that you worry there's going to be that letdown, and it's just you just don't want to lose to them. It's embarrassing, especially at this point. But I wasn't nervous about what they brought to the table. I was nervous to what maybe Arizona would leave on the table.
Yeah, for sure. So, all right. So let's look ahead then a little bit to the Pac-12 tournament. Listen, you're going to get USC. I want to play USC. First of all, USC should be a lot better than they are. It's a perplexing team to watch. Isaiah Collier's really good. Boogie Ellis is good. Bronny doesn't.
Does infield win what I like to call the Lorenzo Romar doing less with most award for this season?
Yeah.
A couple years ago it was Mike Hopkins. In football this year, it probably would have been UCLA. But yeah, there's a coach of the year, and there's which should rightfully go to Washington State, and there's the worst coaching job, which has to go. Is it
to Andy
Enfield? Maybe
Enfield by a
Cronin.
mile. I think you could make the
Maybe
case.
Cronin.
Right, for sure.
But but I think it's Enfield.
Yeah, Ryan Mitchell right here. The great Ryan Mitchell said very good point. USC, then Oregon, Wazoo, Colorado is an interesting road to the title. I'm for it. Listen, I know some people are like, I don't want any part of Stanford. I don't want any part of any of these teams. I want to play good teams to get ready for the NCAA tournament. And some of these teams are just difficult matchups for Arizona. USC should be a lot better than they are. We've been going over this. Wazoo or Stanford, I would prefer to play them either. Colorado doesn't do a ton for me. I would prefer, though, to be able to play Wazoo or Stanford because I think that it would be an interesting little just kind of a test run before the NCAA tournament. I don't believe that Arizona is good enough to just coast here and then say, all right, well, we'll see you come the NCAA tournament. That's not the way that I would look at this, William Brett Ellis.
No, I think use this as a tune-up. I mean, maybe if you went out and smacked USC, then you could say, okay, let's get a win. Whatever happens in the semifinals, great. And then we go prepare. But now, you need to regain because you had momentum. You had a 6-game win streak where you looked really good for all but the first half of the UCLA game, I think it was. But now, you got to get your momentum back, and that means probably playing pretty well in Vegas, or as we all like to call it, McHale North.
Andy Bryant says, I want physical teams. USC and Wazoo are the only ones in the Pac-12. I agree with you. I want physical teams. Also, let's talk about attacking the zone here. It's because Arizona is going to face teams that zone, obviously. I like when, Jervis Williams makes an interesting point. I went back and watched this. There are times when Arizona looks kind of flummoxed against the zone. I like when Pella Larson is kind of in the middle of the paint, getting the, because I think he's a kind of a very, very poor man's Luke Walton, and that I think he's generally a pretty good passer. He can generally find guys on the wing or down low. I think that's how Arizona should attack the zone.
Yeah, he's IKEA Luke Walton, right?
IKEA Luke Walton. He's Kia Luke Walton. How about that?
I don't know if he's that bad.
Kia Boys. He's Kia Boy Luke Walton.
But I will say this: as uncomfortable as they can look against the zone, and then frankly, a lot of that's just you don't see a lot of zone in the Pac-12. I still think they attack it better under Tommy Lloyd than they ever did under Sean Miller.
Well, with Miller, it's like, yeah, for sure. Yes, go ahead.
Miller looked like they threw a different sport at him, but I think he's
like playing intramural like lacrosse or something.
Yeah, you showed up. You showed up for the floor hockey game, and they're like, "No, we're playing lacrosse." I'm like, "Well, there's goals." Yes, I would like a tune-up. I would like to play a physical team. I'd like to play an athletic team. I'd like to play a team that shoots well from the outside. It's like the non-conference. You want to get as many different looks as you can. But your Pac-12 brethren, for as long as they're still here, which is about going to be 72 hours or so, it's not going to help you out either. But I would assume. All these teams are playing for their tournament life, really, with the exception of Wazoo, who's the only other team who's in. So you're going to get everyone's best effort, especially when you get into that second round.
All right, now the Sun Devil ones. Sun Devil fans, though, they've also thrown in the towel. They don't even have post-game some of the time. Not that I blame them, because that's a really, really tough product. But the Sun Devils ones, those are very, very good. U of A success is PHNX success. Jacob Franklin will not hop in here. Jacob Franklin will just talk from behind the scenes, though. That's why you're very upset with Jacob Franklin. All right, Miller, this is very funny. Miller ran 30 seconds of the weave against Sounds. Yes. Oh, that always cracks me.
KO was proud of that, though.
What's that?
KO was proud of his
KO was
offense.
More than proud of that. Zoom Diallo. Arizona will probably not recruit Zoom Diallo. I don't think I'm going to break any news here, but they just don't, I believe that Zoom is a great fit from a talent perspective. I disagree with them. I would definitely recruit Zoom Diallo, but that is, be that as it may. All right, now, with the NCAA tournament right around the corner, obviously, people keep mentioning this point, and I got this on the postgame quite a bit, and I don't know how I feel about it. They say, well, with Houston or UConn, they wouldn't have a let up like this. Correct. They wouldn't. But I also don't know that means anything if Houston plays Arizona.
Did UConn not just get spanked a week ago? Didn't they get throttled like a week and a half ago?
By Seton Hall?
I can't remember who it was. I just remember everyone's like, "Oh, what happened?" Was it that long? We could be. The whole last couple weeks have been. I mean, Bill Self is one of the 3 or 4 best coaches in college basketball. That team looked like they had a letdown the other day. So maybe you're right, but
But I don't really put much into that.
It happens.
Right.
I don't. Again, this hasn't been a huge pattern for Arizona this year. My bigger concerns are the letdowns against, and again, USC by record standpoint is a bad team, but they're a talented team. Oregon State is not. Oregon State sucks.
Yes.
Stanford sucks.
Yes.
They have I know why Wayne Tinkle is there. It's because Oregon State doesn't care about basketball, and he made one Elite Eight run that was pure fluke. I can't figure out why Stanford hasn't, except Stanford doesn't make changes.
Stanford doesn't care about, let's be honest, Stanford doesn't really care about sports either.
And Oregon State probably can't afford to bail on Wayne Tinkle. But those are just bad basketball teams. USC's an underachieving basketball team that may have some chemistry issues behind the scenes. I wonder, again, the distractions of Bronny James, guys who are in there to play for the NBA. Like Collier, and then you have him button heads with Boogie Ellis, who's putting his 5th year, 6th year, 7th year. I think he's 27 years old, I think.
He's actually one of the young bucks.
I think Luke recruited him.
He's only like 23, Boogie Ellis.
Yeah, but he's been there forever.
Correct. And didn't he
start? Well, not even there. He's been in college basketball forever.
Was it Duke, then Memphis, then USC, correct?
I think so. Did he actually play for Memphis, though, or did he just commit to him?
I can't. He played in Memphis, yeah.
It's been so long, and that COVID season messed everything up that I can't remember. But you wonder, here's a guy who is trying to fight for his NBA life against a guy in Collier who has an NBA slot. He's just here for the 1-year check-in. Then you've got the whole Bronny James thing, who's talented, but not as talented as the hype. Certainly does not look like a player who should be drafted by the Lakers to appease his dad. But so I just wonder what kind of chemistry issues you have behind the scenes that has contributed to it. And the fact that, again, I think Andy Enfield's a good coach. I do not think he's a great coach.
By the way, that's the funniest LeBron thing ever, where he keeps talking about how Bronny James could help the Lakers out right now. And then when somebody criticizes his play, just let him be a college kid. Come on, dude.
Okay, I ask you, is there anyone from Arizona's 8-man rotation that you would trade for Bronny James?
No.
And he's going to help the Lakers?
Yeah, well, no, I agree. I actually, what's weird about Bronny James? I actually think people have missed the boat like 9 different times on him. When you first heard about him, AP poll, Arizona at 6. When you first heard about Bronny James, it was always going to be the next LeBron. Then everybody realized he was only going to be 6'3", and then they thought he sucked. Now, then he became good again. He's probably going to play in the NBA based off his own merits if he takes some time. But he's not, again, I don't think he'd play at Arizona. I just kind of the way it is, man. Like, I just don't think he'd play.
Okay, I mean, is he playing over KJ Lewis?
No.
Is he playing over Jaden Bradley?
No.
See, and that's all you need to know. Even though he's good, but he's not good enough to crack Arizona's 8-man based upon what Arizona has on the roster.
Right, exactly. Now, you might bet on this and say, where could I bet on this? Thanks for asking. The BetMGM Sportsbook app, duh. All right, sign up for BetMGM today. Use bonus code PHNX. Place your first BetMGM Sportsbook wager through BetMGM Sportsbook mobile app for at least $5. You'll receive $150 instantly in additional winnings, regardless of your wager's outcome. Check out the show notes for details. In the meantime, let's make fun of Jacob Franklin and listen to Damon with the disclaimer.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 New York. Call 1-800-327-5050 Massachusetts. 21 plus only. Please gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-NEXT-UP Arizona. 1-800-BETS-OFF Iowa. 1-800-270-7117. For confidential help, Michigan. 1-800-981-0023 Puerto Rico. Subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days. In partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. See BetMGM.com for terms. U.S. promotional offers not available in D.C., Mississippi, New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico.
Yeah, that's a very, by the way, I think that's a new read. And yes, we will get to Bronny. That is a great point. He had a heart attack before the season. I do apologize about that. That is that will mix it. Go ahead.
And again, another distraction behind the scenes. I mean, I'm assuming he's well liked. He sounds like a good kid, and your teammate has a heart attack. I believe it was at the facility too. Yeah, that's another tough thing that team had to deal with.
Yes.
So I don't want you to think I'm casting, and I'm not casting this blame on Bronny James.
The same way.
But there's LeBron at courtside. There's ESPN interviewing. Again, if you're Boogie Ellis, if you're Collier, you're the better 2 players, but everyone's talking about the other guy, and whether you can help it or not. These are 18 to 20-something-year-old kids with egos, and I
Yeah.
don't necessarily mean that in a bad way. But so that's again, it's a very difficult situation. It's in a very different way, but not unlike what Arizona went with all the FBI stuff.
Right.
How do you expect 20-year-old kids to deal with it?
All right. Now, by the way, Ryan Neal, you're too valuable of a contributor to the show to be so upset live. You made me feel very bad last post game. We like this Ryan Neal back. Ryan Neal, thank you very, very much. Because you're exactly right. Now with also
No, and he is a good player. He's just again with that kind of hype. How does that deal? How does a team deal with that?
All right, no better time to become a PHNX diehard. Jacob Franklin, pull up these pictures, pull up these. Look at these things. Tony Gimino is going up to Vegas. Well, I will be seeing Tony Gimino up in Vegas. I will be seeing him later today. Can you believe that Anthony bought one of the? Go back to the BTFD shirt, please, Jacob Franklin. Tony Gimino is walking around in one of these. Can you? I will get a picture of this because that is worth 1,000 words right there, William Brad Alice.
I don't know why we're surprised. This is a guy who named his fantasy football team after the strip club from The Sopranos. So,
that's a good point. All right.
Gimino's got a little,
Gimino's got a little flair to him. That's
he does.
Right.
Don't let the glasses and the collar shirts fool you.
Yeah, okay. All right. I'd agree with that. All right. Now, yeah, because we're going to talk more about this. I get everybody asking me about Elijah Arenas. I put a short out about this the other day. Here's where it's good. This is going to be a very, very interesting recruitment. By the way, Bruce Pascoe, we're going to try to get Bruce on this week. Oh, can you imagine Bruce wearing a BTFD shirt?
That one I have a little more trouble with.
Oh, yes, I agree. All right, now,
you know who I think would have? No, you know who I don't think would wear one? Not because of the FD, but because he doesn't like to admit he likes who he covers is Rivera.
Yeah. I know Steve's great because Steve goes to all these things that he doesn't really need to go to and then says he hates doing it. Dude, you didn't. I mean, and I say that respectfully, but Steve's like, Steve, you don't have to go to the Duke game. I mean,
years ago, we made a Twitter account called Cranky Steve Rivera, and I didn't do it long enough, but we had some fun with it. We're
going to get to some Arizona football news in just a second, but Elijah Arenas, back to him real quick. He's going to be a high 5-star kid. You watch him, he is absolutely, I mean, he's the goods. Now he does play for a high school that isn't that great, but he also drops like 95 points per game. Arizona's all over him, but like I said, I'm going to keep saying this. I know I sound like a broken record, but if I get a good point, sometimes I'm just going to keep beating it home. He could go play in New Zealand after high school. He could come to Arizona. He could be a G League Ignite. When you're in Arenas, man, you march to the beat of a different drummer, William.
And that's just the key. I think, and I don't know how good he is, but I know Jason Gardner's son is a recruitable player. I don't know if he's Arizona good. I know Andre's kid is, let's just say, there's a little more stability at home when you're dealing with a Jason Gardner or an Andre Iguodala, which is crazy thinking about Andre, the college kid, knowing that he's the more stable influence. But so you could tell me Gilbert Arenas' son would find his way into Harvard and play there because dad can pay for the tuition, or you could tell me he'd wind up playing for the Harlem Globetrotters. I believe any scenario. I believe anything with Gilbert and his offspring.
Yes, I would say. I don't know how much of. By the way, if Arizona hadn't won, Bruce Pascoe, or Arizona had lost, Bruce Pascoe would have correctly predicted Arizona's record to a T. This is a great point, T. Burns. That 6 losses during the regular season. Arizona said, "Sorry, Bruce, you're not going to get any credit for that. Watch us lose."
Yeah, that was probably really it. I mean,
all right, now let's move over to a little bit of Arizona football because we are a football school. I've been saying this. I think Arizona is going to win the Big 12 next year. I don't care what anybody says. I believe Arizona is going to win the Big 12. We're going to start doing a little bit of some position previews, just kind of, going around a little bit. Why don't we start with the wide receiver room? T-Mac. T-Mac, listen, I held out as long as I could on this one. I always thought Dennis Northcutt was the best wide receiver in school history. Tetairoa McMillan is the best wide receiver in school history. And by the time he leaves here, it's probably not going to even be close.
He is certainly the most talented receiver in Arizona history. And he's probably the best. I mean, statistically, he is. He may not catch, Thomas in number of catches.
But every Mike Thomas. Go ahead.
Yeah,
sorry.
I mean, how many bubble screens contributed to Mike Thomas is them?
Yeah. Exactly.
Look, Northcutt was what, a second-round draft pick?
Yep, first pick in the second round.
I think he's the highest drafted wide receiver in Arizona history. T-Mac,
T-Mac's
barring
a
just
first
being
round pick.
just barring like going to the combine and running a 4.8, which I don't see happening, he's a first round draft pick. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And he's what a number 1 or number 2 wide receiver in the NFL looks like. Arizona doesn't get a lot of those guys. He is one of those guys.
I think he's a guy who certainly, his draft position is going to be based upon need, because more and more in the NFL now they want different types of receivers to run different. It used to be you just trot out 2 receivers, boom. Now you got a slot receiver. You want a guy stretch the field receiver. You want a guy who can get open in the middle, which is what I think T-Mac's going to do well because with his size, he more resembles height-wise a tight end. So I think he's a very versatile player that, yeah, the right team's going to find him and go get him somewhere, probably mid-teens. It depends on the receiver class. I haven't looked at it. This year's receiver class is loaded, so that might actually help him next year too.
I also think you're going to see that this wide receiver class is going to take not a step back at all. By the way, I was not at all surprised that Jacob Cowing ran as fast as he did. I think Jacob Cowing can play in the NFL. And like I said, I keep saying, why can't he be somebody like Zay Flowers? Maybe not quite as shifty, but Jacob Cowing can play. Jacob Cowing is one of the 5 to 8 best wide receivers that's ever come through here, Brad.
No doubt. I think he's a guy who I think a lot of people were rejecting as a 5th to 6th round guy. I think he's probably, with his speed, moved his way up into the 4th probably. Again, the problem with this for Jacob, unfortunately, is it's just a loaded receiver class. Yeah. They're talking maybe 6 to 8 going in the first round,
right?
Which is going to hurt him a little bit. But certainly, again, in the modern NFL, if you don't have 3 or 4 receivers, you don't have any. So people will draft him. I think he and Zay Flowers are different enough. He reminds me, I'll tell you what, the fact that people love Ladd McConkey but don't love Jacob Cowing is kind of, I think they're very similar players. Obviously I saw more of Cowing, but yeah, he's going to be that slot receiver who has a little bit of burst after the catch, and he's going to catch balls. He's going to be a reliable receiver in the slot, I think. And I think, he's definitely got a place in the NFL.
I also don't think that there's going to be any draw or any fallback from Arizona or at the Arizona receiver core. I get that you've lost, get that you lose Cowing. I think Kevin Green's going to be a monster this year. I think Kevin Green's going to go for 700-800 yards. I also think that Malachi Riley's going to be right there. AJ Jones, I'm excited to see what he can do. I'm also happy though that Bobby Wade's in here and he says, listen, everybody, it's a fresh slate. We're not going based off last year. Listen, T-Mac's going to start, but it's a fresh slate. I'm excited to see that because I think this previous staff, for all the good things they did, got a little bit too locked in on certain players that they just couldn't come off the field.
Yeah, this is one of my criticisms of Jed Fish. And I won't want there to be revisionist history. I think Fish did a great job last year, but I've had some questioning about some of his stuff. One was their inability to spread the ball around.
Right.
They typically locked in on 2 receivers and a tight end, and if not, it went to the running back. So I've liked Green, I've liked Jones, I really like Riley, Lamonius Craig. I think you've got talented receivers. And I don't know if there's a clear number 2, but you might have a bunch of 3s who, can bolster that room. And assuming what the offense is going to look like, I would like to see that again. Should T-Mac be your number 1 option? Absolutely. But if that ball doesn't get spread around, and the fact that they only used 1 tight end when I think Burnett was a guy you
Burnett was probably ready. Yeah.
You try to find a way to get him the ball, and if it's my same criticism of not using Speedy Luke as much, to be honest.
Right.
Again, I don't want this to seem like I'm burying Fish because they won 10 games, but those were my criticisms in week 3 when they were 1 and 2, and those were my criticisms at the end of the year. Figure out a way to utilize your weapons. I think in many ways Fish's system, and I don't know it's awful. It's not, obviously, was to I got a system that you got to conform to. And that's a great way. That's what they do in the NFL, or that's what most teams do in the NFL. The really good coaches, Reed, Harbaugh, will find ways to use their talent. So when Mark Andrews goes down, that other tight end stepped up who was a completely different player, and they ran completely different plays to him. Some teams don't do that. The good teams do. And that's what I want to see Brennan and Babers do. Figure out how to get these guys the ball. And if that means, jet sweeping teams to death like Oregon State used to do
Right.
with Speedy Luke, great. If that means just trying to get Burnett the ball in space and run some tight end screens to him because he's got a little more wiggle than McLaughlin did, great. If that means jump balls to T-Mac in the corner because that's what he does well, great. But let's utilize these kids because, again, I think there's plenty of talent there.
All right,
and you got a quarterback who can get them the ball.
Also, it does help if you play the right quarterback. Also, some Burrows, $20 or 20% off your order of up to $100 when you use code PHNX at checkout for the whole month of March. Available in restaurant, drive-thru, and when you order online. Not available at third-party deliveries. Visit someburrows.com. I will be getting some Burrows on my way up to Las Vegas after I see the great Jacob Franklin on Wednesday.
Get that 20% off, load the car up with burritos, man. You eat the whole way to Vegas.
You know how I go, man. Seriously. All right. A little bit of a shorter show today. I got to go meet with the athletic director. But William Brad Alice, appreciate you a ton. You'll be seeing a lot more of William. Very well. William, as always, you're the man, though, bro.
Yeah, sorry about the sound in the background. If you hear the kid gaming and the dog scratching at the door, they hear me broadcasting. They want to be in there. We've only got the husky hanging out. He's been a good boy. All
right. For William Brad Alice, I'm merely Mike Luke. Jacob Franklin causing grief behind the scenes. We will be back with you tomorrow. You've been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.